morning. You're watching Businessworld Live. I'm Danny Laurel.
And I'm Jess De Los Santos. Here are the biggest stories to kickstart this trading day Tuesday. Regulators are pushing for the passage of a law protecting financial consumers that's amid a surge in cyber frauds.
Researchers at Okta observe a decline in the growth rate of COVID-19 cases in Metro Manila, but outside the region, provinces are seeing a spike in infections.
Challenges mar the first day of the government's no vaccine, no ride policy for public transportation in NCR.
And House Stock, the first company to list on the PSE this year, sizzles on its market debut with share prices rising by more than 6%. We begin our broadcast with the Bangko Sentral throwing its weight behind a proposed measure seeking to enhance financial consumer protection.
This as the BSP revealed that cybercrime surged during the pandemic. Los Baños with the rest of the story.
Over the course of the pandemic, the Bangko Sentral received thousands of complaints on financial transactions totaling over 42,000. In 2021 alone, that amounted to 540 million pesos. Since 2019, that has already reached 2 billion pesos.
A majority of these cases have been deemed closed, but the process was long and arduous. And for many complaints, the resolutions were unfavorable to the consumer.
Central Bank Governor Ben Jokno tells the Senate cybercrimes rose as digital transactions gained traction during the pandemic. Based on BSP's records, the top three cyber frauds are identity theft, phishing and social engineering schemes, and payments done with no visual card checks. In 2020, hacking and malware attacks rose over 2,000% from previous years, while phishing increased to 302% from 2019.
In fact, complaints related to the use of internet banking and mobile banking account for 45.2% of the total complaints in 2021. Hackers and scammers took advantage of the digital infrastructure and consumer vulnerability to perpetrate crime.
Jokno laid down these figures before the upper house as he vouches for the passage of the Financial Consumer Protection Act. If passed into law, regulators will be able to hold hearings on consumer complaints and implement restrictions on unreasonable interests, fees, or charges. The Insurance Commission and the Securities and Exchange Commission also backed the measure. Senator Grace Poe, who chairs the Senate Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies, is also pushing for FCP.
Expansion comes with its own range of challenges, from the small-scale fraud and investment scams to the hacking of one of the largest banks in the Philippines, which left at least 700 accounts compromised. Yung perang
Poe says as digital banking makes it easier to reach the goal of making 70% of the population banked by 2023, it would be crucial that measures are in place to ensure that regulators can efficiently oversee the system. Reporting for News 5, Mean Los Baños, we are One News.
Looks like the sideways rally tilted downwards on Monday. Dan, will there be a reversal of fortunes this Tuesday?
Well, just ganun na nga. If you can see my terminal here, we have bounced back 0.5%. So not bad indeed, and hoping, of course, that this continues throughout the trading day. But exactly what you said, it's been sideways with a tilt towards the downside. Yesterday, Tina Ulong did mention that the markets closed lower because of those record high virus cases, but really because of, the story we have of no vax, no public utility vehicle ride. She said that creates expectations of slower growth. Another issue is Phil Stocks had noted that trading was anemic. Value turnover was just 5.8 billion. Not a lot of traders are really rushing into that. But the issue here is that we did keep in step with the rest of the Asian region yesterday. The markets were choppy. There was Chinese economic data coming out, and that confirmed the deadening effect of COVID restrictions on consumer spending over in China, which is, of course, a very big economy in Asia, the largest economy. Another thing that might be worrying here is the peso, and you can see that finally strengthening a touch, but we are still above the 51 level. We've actually seen the peso yesterday dropping the most in a week, as we did keep alert level 3 in NCR, and this is on the back of remittances rising 5.1% year on year on November. Central banks saying yesterday, at least Friday, that they could meet the inflation expectations if oil prices settle at above 90, unless rather crude oil prices settle above $95 a barrel. So again, our peso strengthening after some weakening, and our index also seeing some bounce back this Tuesday morning. And in fact, yesterday we did see quite an exciting run for that IPO. That's of course house stock, and you can see that continuing its ascent. That's up by 1.9% already. So it did IPO at 1 peso 50 centavos. It's now at 1 peso and 64. So not bad. Yesterday it already rose by 6.7%. Now what is this? Of course, they raised 750 million pesos. And what's very interesting, Jess, is this was, a retail play. A lot of small investors, participation from OFWs in the Middle East and Southeast Asia. That's according to ICCP, which was, of course, the underwriter. And this, according to Timson Securities, even if it's a relatively small issuance, it's on the small and medium enterprises board. He did say that this may reflect investor optimism on this market segment, and participants might be excited for the growth. What is this company? It was established by the Madlambayan family. They're from Pampanga, and really it's about residential, low cost residential housing in areas like Antipolo, Laguna, Marikina, and Metro Manila. So the development vice president Terence Madlambayan did mention that there is still a clamor for the quality yet affordable housing options in these locations, even during the pandemic, because people are becoming even more budget conscious during this period. So again, house stock, our first IPO of 2022, still continuing its ascent, up by 2.5% this Tuesday morning. Now, public utility vehicles were randomly checked yesterday. That's following the implementation of the no vaccine, no ride policy.
But day one of the new rule was fraught with challenges, especially over the validation of vaccination cards. Mon Gualvez with a full story.
The volume of jeepney passengers in Monumento have eased up by 1 p.m. And upon taking a jeepney, I noticed that the driver did not check for vaccination cards. But he at least made sure that physical distancing is enforced inside the jeepney. Authorities only allow 70% passenger capacity in public transportation.
Sobra yan, sobra. Bawal sa amin. Yan, 70% lang.
Same is the case with the modern jeepneys in Blumentritt. The driver admitted that he only checks for vaccine cards when he knows he's going to pass by a checkpoint.
Bakit di mo na sine-check yung mga vaccination card? Kapag marami pa siya matutulungan, sinasabihan ko yan na, sir, ang sasakay dito yung may bakuna lang. Hindi po, no? Hindi ko tinatanong. Hindi naman pinapansin ng pulis pag hindi po, no?
There are some drivers who ask their passengers if they are vaccinated. But the big question is how they validate the vaccination cards presented to them when they don't even look at the photo on the card nor ask for another ID to verify. The PNP Highway Patrol Group mounted a checkpoint in Rizal Avenue, Caloocan to enforce the policy. Those who are only partially vaccinated were asked to alight and go home.
Warning muna yung ginagawa natin. Purely advocacy muna yung ng highway patrol ngayon. So, pero yung mga glaring na violation, tineteketa na natin.
Many passengers are in favor of the policy and emphasize the need for safety amid the threat of the Omicron variant.
Mas mainam na po yung ganito, mas mahigpit tayo kasi mahirap na eh. Lalo na po sa akin mag-OFW, mag-a-abroad.
Abala kasi na po yung biyahe. Kailangan po painto-into para i-check yung mga vaccination card. Pero mas okay naman po para safe po lahat dahil fully vaccinated po.
While reminders are in place for commuters, the PNP HPG also warns operators and PUV drivers that blatant violations may result to fines up to 10,000 pesos and a possible suspension or revocation of franchise. For News 5, Mon Gualvez, we are One News.
Now, the new vaccine mandate for travel in and out of the capital covers all modalities, including air travel.
Now, to find out how day one went for them, we have on the show Shelo Villaluna, spokesperson of flag carrier Philippine Airlines. Good morning, Shelo. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, good morning, Jess. Good morning, Danny, and to all your viewers on Business World Live. A
Okay, so
pleasant morning to all of you.
all right, thank you again for joining us. How did day one of the no vax, no ride policy go for Philippine Airlines? Did you at least encounter any hiccups?
Well, in general, Jess, I would describe it as generally orderly and smooth, except for a few hiccups, which are very minor and which were resolved on site. For example, some of the passengers were with minors aged below 11 years old, and they were asking if the minors could travel with them to Manila. So there was a lot of back and forth. And of course, the airline said yes, because minors who are unvaccinated, for as long as they are traveling with fully vaccinated adults and returning to their places of residence like Manila or NCR, for example, are considered essential travelers. Another hiccup would be people going to the airport totally unaware of the new policy of no vaccination, no fly, and we had no fly. So our airport frontliners had to politely decline and prevented them from entering the premises. So but majority as a whole, we can say as a whole, it was generally smooth, Jester.
Now, Shiloh, how many flights are to be covered by this new rule, the no vax, no ride policy? And are there other point to point flights, like, for example, say, flights from Cebu to other locations which are expected to follow suit?
All right, we operate around 80 round trip flights per day for our domestic sector. So that would be 80 flights a day. So these are all domestic flights, Jester. So these are covered by the no fly, no vaccine policy. And with regards to your question, does it cover certain point to point routes, like let's say from our other hubs to the intra domestic routes? No, like Cebu to other parts of the Philippines, that's not covered. What is covered by the policy domestically would be our routes emanating from Manila and returning to Manila, Chester.
Ma'am, can you clarify what about international travel?
Okay, Danny, international travel that is covered by another set of rules and protocols. It is covered by the new IATF regulation. So if you are coming from a green country, you can still fly to the Philippines, whether you are vaccinated or unvaccinated. What is important is that you show a negative RT-PCR test taken 48 hours before your flight to Manila. And that is the same regulation for if a passenger is coming from a red country, he or she can still fly to Manila for as long as the passenger has a negative RT-PCR test taken 48 hours before his or her flight to Manila. So we have to make it very clear that the no vax, no fly covers only domestic. And for the international services, we go by the IATF regulation, which has specific rules for vaccinated and unvaccinated. But I would like to stress that effective January 16, there is a special protocol for eligible foreigners arriving in the Philippines. When you say eligible foreigners, these are members of humanitarian mission, diplomatic corps, and foreign spouses of Filipino nationals. These are eligible. And of course, foreign nationals who have permanent resident visas to the Philippines. And of course, those with work visas, these are the foreigners and who can arrive in the Philippines. They must be fully vaccinated, and that rule took effect last January 16. So I know there's a lot on everyone's plate to memorize and to be
Correct.
very aware of all of these nuances cutting across all forms of travel.
Basta magpabakuna is your main point. It actually
Yes, magpabakuna.
eases things for everyone. Ma'am, you've mentioned already exemptions. Apart from diplomatic, etc. There's also medical conditions preventing some people to be vaccinated. There's also possibly some people that are not vaccinated but need to provide essential goods and services. Are these accepted? How do you verify these? To what extent can you have essential goods and services traveling with people who are not vaccinated?
Yes, you're right, Danny. Part of the exemption would be unvaccinated passengers or partially vaccinated passengers who have to travel for essential reasons such as medical emergency to undertake a medical procedure. And what is the proof? That would be a medical certificate issued by the passenger's doctor and verified, of course, by Philippine Airlines. And as you mentioned, another exemption would be travelers who are partially vaccinated or totally unvaccinated who have to procure goods and services. For example, if you ingest, you have to fly, let's say, to a certain province because you have to procure essential goods and services for your business. Then you have to procure a permit from your own local government unit, your barangay, that is the barangay special permit. So that is the proof that you are going to undertake essential travel for the procurement of vital goods and services. And may I add, Jester and Danny, halimbawa, yung ating kasambahay, yung mga yaya, okay, nagbakasyon sa probinsya at and they have to return to Manila, kailangan nila magpakita ng letter mula sa kanilang mga amo. And of course, their ID. So this is another form of essential travel. For example, if a minor individual, a minor child, let's say less than, younger than 18 years old, but physically able to travel alone because that's allowed in the airline industry, unaccompanied minors, for as long as they're physically able to travel alone, for as long as they can show proof that their place of residence is NCR or Manila, then they will be allowed to travel
Okay.
back to Manila.
Ma'am, what if for those na ayaw talaga magpabakuna and have booked their flights and there wasn't this policy before and now they won't be allowed to travel, what are the options for them? Can they refund? Are they, eligible for refunds or I don't know, rebooking in the future if they do decide to get the vaccine?
Okay, if they're unvaccinated and they're anti-vaxxers. So unfortunately, if they had previously booked before the implementation of this policy, by the way, it started yesterday, January 17, and they bought a ticket before this date, then they really have to have themselves vaccinated in order to take that flight, especially if the flight is for domestic travel and they're traveling as domestic tourists. That is the only way, unless they can find a compelling reason for Philippine Airlines to allow them. If, let's say, they have those tickets, they're unvaxxed, but they have to have a medical emergency in a domestic destination, then that is again supported by the rules I mentioned a while ago, the medical certificate. But if it's for domestic travel, kagaya ng sinabi niyo, magpabakuna na lang, hindi ba? Because at least you have more flexibility as a traveler.
But will
Okay.
they be refunded, ma'am, if they don't want, they just simply say, okay, ayoko
Okay.
na lang.
Preparing sa travel
All right.
fund
So
in
what?
the future.
Yes. Okay, Jester and Danny, what are their options? They may rebook within 60 days from their original flight date, and they may reroute, they may refund, or to give them more flexibility, we have a product called travel credits. They can convert the full cost of their ticket, the base fare of their ticket, into travel credits, and they can utilize the cost of their ticket within 1 year from the date of issuance. So that gives them more flexibility, especially if the travel is not time bound. If it's a vacation that they can postpone, it's not time bound. You're not attending a family gathering or binyag or kasal na talagang time bound. So these are the options available to our passengers who are affected by these regulations.
Okay, of course, these new rules, all driven, of course, by the current Omicron surge, and globally, we're talking about thousands of flights already getting disrupted. Just how bad has the recent spike in cases affected Philippine Airlines' operations? Like, for example, how many of your flight and ground personnel have contracted COVID or had to undergo quarantine?
All right, Jester, that is an interesting question. At this point, we are on the 18th of January. A lot have already recovered and they have been replaced by others. So it's an evolving situation. But based on my latest research, which goes by a few days ago or a week ago, approximately 100 of our workers have been affected directly by the COVID-19 virus, and close to 200 went on quarantine as of last week because of exposure to a COVID positive individuals. So it is still the majority of those affected are those exposed to the virus as opposed to the number of those infected. But nonetheless, the impact has been significant. We have canceled 130 flights covering the period January 9 to January 16, and another 100 plus covering the period January 16 all the way to January 21. Why? Because we have projected the number of cabin crew who will not be able to serve to be on duty, and we have factored in the reserve crew down the line and the number of people affected. So it was prudent on the part of FAL operations and the FAL commercial group team to carry out these precautionary cancellations so that the passenger is well informed and can make the necessary adjustments.
Okay, ma'am, I just wanted to clarify how many flight cancellations are you talking about here?
Yes, we are talking about 130, so that's around close to 300 flights from the period January 9 all the way to January 21. When we talk about 300 flights, we are talking about flights originating from Manila, going to domestic destinations and back. Okay, so outbound Manila and inbound Manila. So these are the flight legs. These are the cancellations.
Okay, ma'am, final question before we let you go. It's been a very difficult time, to say the least, for the airline industry, not just in the Philippines, not just Philippine Airlines, but generally around the world. Are you seeing these kinds of policies on no vax, no ride effective when it comes to the recovery of the sector in general, and particularly for PAL? Is this going to be helpful? You're in the middle of a reorganization. Is this something that you believe will be helpful for the recovery?
Yes, at this time, we are prioritizing the safety and health of our workers, and of course, the safety and health also of our passengers. Because with this policy, it cannot be denied that you are actually flying lesser passengers because you have to turn away certain passengers who do not conform or comply with the requirement. And as you very well know, the entire population, I mean, the flying public, not 100% are fully vaccinated. So as to the impact to our operations, in late 2021, we have already factored in this scenario. We knew that we had to take a step back in our targets because as far as the number of flights are concerned, the number of passengers to be flown, but we are confident that with the restructuring plan that is in place, that will override these difficulties. And we have already projected that there is a scenario of there is a better situation that awaits us. Then we are hopeful that we will be able to navigate this difficult situation. It's good you mentioned, the airline industry. I would just like to say, and you very well know, we discussed this before airtime, that yes, we have exited U.S. bankruptcy protection, which gives us enough fiscal strength and a better fiscal position as we start a brand new year. Of course, we're starting with a bit of difficulty because of the Omicron challenge, but just the same, and amidst all questions from your viewers, yes, we continue our restructuring program, our fleet rationalization. We have already carried out our manpower reduction that has been done away, that we have done that already. And of course, our cost control measures. We have also pivoted the business, putting greater emphasis, of course, on a very high need, which is our all cargo charters, our all cargo flights. Amidst all the restrictions and limitations in travel, our cargo business has remained profitable from the start of the pandemic in March 2020 up to this day.
Okay, thank you, ma'am, for that update. All the best in getting back on your feet, and of course, hoping for your employees to also get better and be able to serve soon. Chelo Villaluna, spokesperson of Flag Carrier Philippine Airlines.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Danny, and good morning to all of you.
Now, coming right up, Octo researchers say it's too early to tell if COVID-19 cases have peaked in Metro Manila. That's despite a marked decrease in the daily growth rate.
More of that and other stories when Business World Live returns. Stay with us.
Good morning. You're still watching Business World Live. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danny Laurel. Now, the daily growth rate of new COVID 19 cases in Metro Manila has decreased further.
But the Octa Research Group insists it's too early to tell if COVID-19 figures have peaked. Here are the details.
With an additional 37,000 COVID infections, the health department has confirmed the community transmission of the Omicron variant in Metro Manila. The DOH says the number of COVID cases has been doubling every 2 days. In fact, the average daily cases in NCR has already reached 17,000 from just more than 6,000 last week.
Bagamat hindi ho nakakahabol ang ating whole genome sequencing, we already have determined that there are local cases already.
But despite these considerable numbers, the Octa Research Group has actually observed a decline in Metro Manila's growth rate over the past few days. According to Professor Guido David, NCR's daily growth rate is now at -4% compared to the 11% growth rate last week. The reproduction number in NCR has also declined to 2.37% from more than 6%. Despite this, the Octa Research Group says it is still too early to tell if COVID cases in Metro Manila has already reached its peak.
Ayaw nating maging complacent tayo, maging kampante. Gusto natin tingnan na masdan natin mabuting trends at siguro next week Yusek makikita talaga natin kung talagang bababa na yung bilang dito sa NCR.
But while the COVID situation in Metro Manila is slowly improving, provinces are now the ones seeing an increase in COVID-19 infections. These include Benguet, Cebu, Pampanga, Bataan, Iloilo, Davao del Sur, and Isabela, just to name a few.
Even sa Mindanao, may nakikita na tayong simulang pagtaas ng bilang ng kaso kasama din sa Zamboanga City at Davao del Sur.
With the conditions still unstable, the Octa Research continues its call for the public to get vaccinated. For News 5, Paul Samarita, we are One News.
Here are the other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. COVID-19 was among the leading cause of deaths in the country. That's from January to October last year. Registered deaths due to COVID-19 totaled to over 75,200, or 12.5% of all deaths tallied, making the virus the number 3 cause of death in the 10 months to October. The 2 leading causes of death among Filipinos were ischemic heart diseases and cerebrovascular diseases. The PSA says data on COVID deaths were based on death certificates received and certified by health officers of LGUs. This is different from the data collected by the health department, which maintains a separate tracking system that only counts confirmed cases.
Analysts say foreign direct investments to the country could pick up. That's following the elections in May, or as policy directions of the new administration become clearer. Former BSP Deputy Governor Diwa Ginigundo also said that FDIs will definitely be sensitive to the possible results of the upcoming elections, noting it has been that way ever since. He also noted that foreign investors expect market-friendly policies from presidential candidates, and according to Ginigundo, it's also a big turn-off for foreign investors to deal with corruption and bad governance, and that respect for property rights is fundamental. The BSP expects FDI inflows to reach $8.5 billion this year.
Manila Water has signed a concession agreement with the provincial government of Pangasinan. That's for a bulk water supply project to help meet the province's water requirements. The water concessionaire said the project has an estimated capital expenditure of 8 billion pesos. That's over a 25-year contract period. It is also estimated to deliver a build volume of 200 million liters per day by the final year. The project will create an infrastructure that will source water from the Agno River to increase water supply in the province. If successful, it will provide water to about 1.4 million residents across 14 cities and municipalities in Pangasinan.
And foreign business groups are urging lawmakers to complete the ratification of a measure creating the Philippine Transportation Safety Board. Members of the Joint Foreign Chambers note that the new PTSB can reduce major transportation-related accidents that are, quote, taking the lives of too many Filipinos. The JFC said, the PTSB bill has repeatedly been filed since 2004 and has languished in Congress for almost 2 decades. JFC is a coalition of the US, Australia, New Zealand, Canadian, European, Japanese, and South Korean chambers. The PTSB, which will be attached to the Office of the President, will be the primary agency in charge of investigating transportation related accidents and incidents.
And that's the first look into the business day this Tuesday, January 18, 2022. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danny Laurel. Mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.